Hi everyone, welcome back to this channel of crafting, crochet and knitting. My name is Nikki and welcome to my little yarniverse. So hello, welcome if you're new, welcome back if you are a returning viewer. I've been having a little trouble recording recently because every time I sit down to record, typically I record like a long form video, and either I have this massive sneezing fit halfway through it, or I just haven't had the lighting to be able to do a long form video. So at least as a temporary measure, we're going to switch to some short form for a little while, over winter at least, because I've got some usable light right now. I don't have a sneezing fit. I have really bad allergies, so it just comes over me whenever is inconvenient. So we're just going to do a short video, and I'm going to update you on one of the things that I made out of hand-dyed yarn. So let's jump into it. Okay, so the item that I am showing you today, you have seen bits of before. I don't think I've shown you the finished product though. So we are using the Wool is the Answer yarn in the colourway Cherry. Beautiful burgundy colour. And basically, like, I didn't even register that I was working with hand-dyed yarn when I made this, because I was using this yarn to tweak a pattern. And yeah, I'll talk more about that when I show you the gloves. So it was already caked up. I thought, okay, well, that one's caked up, I better use that one in my pattern attempt and see how it comes out. And I was so focused on the pattern that I didn't realise, hang on a minute, this is your first first cake of hand-dyed yarn that you're ever using. I didn't take a minute to check that. And it is 70% superwash merino, 20% yak and 10% nylon. So this yarn, I think the yak is why it has a slightly more rustic feel to it than some of the superwash merino nylon blends that I've used before, but it's not scratchy. Okay, like when people say rustic, like my mind immediately goes to scratchy, and it really isn't. It's just got a little bit more texture to it than what some of those have. So as you can see, I really didn't use a lot. There is absolutely loads of this left, and that's because I only used it to make some fingerless mittens. So in fact, actually, if I wear my scarf, you can't see them very well because they're similar colours. So let's put them on. Okay, and these are inspired from a fairy tale pattern that I have, and they're called the Bookish Bell Mitts. So originally, this was a lot more floral, inspired from Belle from Beauty and the Beast. But my husband wanted a pattern that he could do with his own hand-dyed yarn, which wasn't a scarf pattern. I think we've all been there, right? Like, we've all got to that point where we started with a scarf and then we were like, I'm so sick of this now. He's at that point. He hasn't finished the scarf. He wants something more exciting to make. But obviously the challenge is something that's more exciting, but something that also he can actually do as a beginner. So I showed him a book and he liked the pattern of these. And I sort of looked at the pattern and thought, okay, well, it's a little bit, needs a bit of tweaking. So one of the things that we tweaked is that this cuff originally was very poofy, which obviously neither me or him liked the look of. So I got rid of the poofy sleeve and I just added a 1x1 rib. And the other thing is that this pattern was done flat, so rows up and down rows in the knitting, and then sewn together. And I'm really lazy. I hate to sew in my ends. I don't want there to be a seam if there doesn't have to be a seam. As you can saw earlier, maybe like I've still got little bits here that I've got to finish. I got to finish tucking in. I kind of like did it down the very small 1x1 end there. I worked it down there and then just like left it tucked in. Haven't actually attempted to weave it into the pattern. And so the pattern itself was the other thing that obviously had to change, because I wanted to work in the round instead of going backwards and forwards. So I worked out how to reverse the pattern in such a way as to knit in the round here, worked the original pattern front and back here, and then went back to knitting in the round here. And so one thing I would note, I'm not going to tell you like what that pattern looked like, because obviously it's a paid for pattern, it's in one of my pattern books, but the principle of it is that if you're taking something that is worked flat and you're trying to make it in the round and it's got some pattern to it, One thing you're going to want to do is reverse your knit stitches and your purl stitches. So where there would have been a knit, you would have to put a purl. And I say where you would have put a knit and where you would have put a purl, because the other thing you have to bear in mind is that if you've got row 1 and row 2, then row 1 is going along your work, and then row 2 is going that way along your work. So the other thing you have to reverse is your direction. So when you do knitting in the round, you're going to do that, and then that, and then that. Okay, you're going to go from the same direction every time. So one thing that you have to reverse is the stitches themselves. So anywhere that there would be a knit, you need a purl, and anywhere that there would be a purl, you need a knit. But the other thing you need to do is to actually flip the direction of the round of stitches in order to make your row of stitches. So something to bear in mind. I'm going to tell you that that's the technique. I'm not actually going to like show the pattern. But this is designed in this very geometric purl and stockinette, purl and knit ridges and V's, so that we have this like stem. It was originally meant to be a stem based on the rose from Beauty and the Beast, and there was meant to be a big rose motif at the bottom, which again neither me nor my husband wanted, so we got rid of that. But we did like the geometric pattern still, so we kept this, what is effectively the stem, and then on each side of the stem are kind of leaves made out of the purl bumps. So there's just little diamonds going backwards and forwards, up and down the stem. And so when you take off the rose and you take off the poofy cuff, you get this very lovely geometric shaping that we both quite like. So I love the colour. I think the design works out well. I'm pretty sure I got my husband to try these on when I was making them, but I should double check, get him to try them on, just make sure that they are something that's going to fit him. Because there's not much wiggle room in terms of expanding the pattern, and if he does need to go up a size, what we'll probably have to do is go up like a needle size instead of something maybe to compensate, but we don't want the pattern itself to get washed out. So a little bit of consideration there. I mean, yarn is stretchy, so like, I mean, there's a lot of room in here. I think he could probably get them on. I think we'll be all right. But as a new knitter, he's got a very tight gauge, so we'll see. I might have to supervise a bit. But I'm just loving that he's enjoying his knitting. He has his own skein of yarn picked out that's been sat in my cupboards, protected, because I always put them in the organza bags just to keep the moths off them. We don't have many moths. We got some netting for the windows to keep the moths out, but we do still get like little flies that can get through the net. So I still like to keep my yarn really protected. I don't like leave it on the floor. I always put it in organza bags, that kind of thing. So yeah, when he's ready for that, we'll see how they work up, because they're a very vibrant colour. So those are these gloves, and the other thing is that I got to test wear them in Scotland recently. It's been a while, but yeah, we went up to Scotland back in autumn now, and it was a bit chilly, but I was really surprised that these fingerless gloves did the job. So like, when I see fingerless gloves, I immediately think, oh, why are you wearing fingerless gloves? Surely your fingers are still going to get cold. And I think that that's true in like really extreme weathers, but when you've got like more of a wind chill and it's not that cold, I think it's sufficient. And I wonder if, so like, here's me getting like slightly physicsy and biology in this and attempting to rationalise how this works, but I think that the wool is keeping your palm really toasty, so then when the blood comes from your palm to your finger, it's warm. And then as long as the temperature difference isn't so drastic that all the heat is lost immediately, I think maybe the blood's going to get a little bit cold, a little bit colder, a little bit colder, a little bit colder, and then bang, it's back in the glove and it warms up again. And I think that's maybe why it's quite effective. So again, like if you're in like really cold temperatures, the heat would be transferred out of your fingers faster. That's how heat transfer works. But in just like a little bit of wind chill, you know, autumn in the UK, I think I found, for me at least, that it was sufficient. I know there are people who have things like rain rods, which would not make these good for them, but for me, I found them really toasty, really warm, and actually like stopped me overheating, because I'm very tactile. You can see me doing it. I'm very tactile. When I knit, if my hands are cold, I still won't put gloves on, because I want to be able to feel the knitting needle and feel where my stitches are going. When I'm driving, I want to be able to feel the steering wheel, that kind of thing. I don't like wearing normal gloves for that reason. I like that tactile, and so I'll just go around, and if I get cold hands, I get cold hands, which is probably quite bad for me. So these are a great solution to that, and yeah, I'm going to be wearing them more often. So in terms of like that rustic yak feeling in them, so like I can feel it, not so much on my hands, which is strange because you'd think my hands would have more sensitive skin, but I can feel it here. What I do wonder, I went for a tighter cuff so that it would stay closed, you know, purpose of a glove, but I'm wondering if maybe I should have done a slightly looser, maybe added 2 stitches in here just to give it that extra looseness, because where that is tighter around my wrist, I can feel the presence of the glove. It's not that it's scratching, but I can feel that it's there, you know, it's not totally seamless. So wrong choice of words, the gloves themselves are seamless, that was the point. But yeah, it's not noticeable. So that would, I think, be my one note if I do this again. And obviously my husband's gonna have bigger wrists, so maybe that is something I need to tell him actually, to add those extra stitches. Yeah, I'm quite happy how this turned out. I'm actually won over by it. I'll probably make another pair at some point, not with the same yarn, but I do have a lot of yarn left, and so I am wondering, well, what do I make with the remaining yarn, or do I save it and throw it into a project with something similar? Because obviously there's a lot of yarn here, not enough maybe to make something like a scarf or a shawl, because it's now less than 100 grams. It would be enough to make a hat, but I'm not really a big hat wearer. Maybe it would be enough to make a small scarf that would go under a coat, so not one that has to be really big and bulky, but just one that will get the back of your neck. That's an option. So yeah, I mean, if you've got any ideas, let me know. So just before we end, I remembered that I had one more note on yarn in a cake. I have heard that if you get yarn caked up, it's great in terms of being able to start your project straight away, because yeah, you just get that centre pull, or if you've got a yarn bowl, you stick it in and you pull from the outside. Really easy to get going. And if you're on the move a lot, or you're getting it, like if you're out and about on a holiday and you need some yarn, then this is great. But once you've caked up yarn, it slightly stretches the yarn, and so if you have it caked up for ages, then maybe it's not the best form for it. And I can see a difference between the looser yarn in the middle that has been able to fall back in on itself, where the bobbin would have been originally, and the yarn on the outside, which is definitely tighter. And over a long period of time I am worried about this, but also I'm not ready to use it, so there's not a lot I can do unless I try and like rehank it, and I do not have the equipment to rehank this much yarn. I could do a little bit around my legs maybe, but nearly 100 grams, I don't think that's going to be possible. So yes, just a note on that. If you are not ready to work on your project, try not to cake up your yarn. It's easier to take it around in hanks, but I don't know. I'll let you know when I do my next project how this ended up working by comparison, because yeah, I've got no choice. This is a cake and it's gonna have to stay a cake. So I'll let you know like how much of an effect that has. Thank you for joining me today on this much shorter video. Please let me know in the comments what it is that you're working on, what it is that you're doing in life. Like, are you a knitter, are you a crocheter, are you a needle felter? I actually got some needle felting kits while I was in Scotland, so I'm excited to try those when I, you know, actually have time, and let you know how that goes for me. That is a new to me craft, but I do knit and crochet. So yeah, let me know in the bottom if you do any of those, if you do something else with your yarn craft. I'm really excited to know. And thank you for joining me today. I will see you in the next one.